everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Got a great show for you guys here today. Lots of fun, lots of disaster. Looks like we might have a government shutdown on our hands. Drama. So that's going to be fun. Actually, it's not going to be fun, but nonetheless, we're going to report on some of the interesting aspects of it, and that in itself will be a little bit fun, at least for me. So we've got that, the Republicans shutdown. We've got John Kelly. A little bit of an interesting update on that, actually. More information, and this is from a New York Times piece that documents the internal fighting between John Kelly, Donald Trump. That's really interesting. We also have a conservative commentator that basically comes clean and says that he would prefer white supremacists to undocumented immigrants. Hey, look, at least they're being honest about it, right? So we have that. We've got Mick Mulvaney and his changes at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That should irritate you, piss you off. And then all that. We've got more stories as well. But we're going to start out with something more interesting. Trump's hair. I know, right? Before I get into that, though, I want to thank everybody who's watching. Please give us a like and a share to make sure the word gets out and all that stuff. So I appreciate that. Also, people who support the show, thank you very much. I want to give a big shout out to you guys and gals as well for supporting the show. That's patreon.com/TYTNation if you want to support us on Patreon to make sure that we stay independent and non-corporate sponsored. So, okay. So let's start out and talk about Trump's hair. Oh, it was supposed to be up before. Okay. So the interesting tidbits about the relationship between Donald Trump and porn star Stormy Daniels, that's actually not a real name, is coming out. And this, and actually a lot of information is coming out from their recent release of a 2011 interview published by In Touch. Now, in this, they talk about a lot of different things. Apparently how, the sex stuff, I'm not really interested in that stuff because, hey, man, it's not really my business. I'm not going to get into people's sex lives. I don't really care about that. But there's also some other fun stuff, including Trump's hair. So, now, I love this. Apparently, Daniels, and if this is true, and you can take it with a little bit of a grain of salt if you want to, but nonetheless, it's fun. Daniels explains that Trump believes his hair has some kind of power. Now, look, you all seen Trump's hair, right? It's ridiculous. And look, this is coming from somebody who has no hair. So maybe I'm not the best judge on hair. And you can come out and you can say, hey, look, man, you're bald. What do you have to say about people's hair? Fair enough. Totally. But nonetheless, a lot of people who have hair, have actually criticized Trump's hair. And this includes Daniels. Now, she apparently asked him about his hair. And she says, hey, I was like, dude, what's up with that? What's up with your hair? And so he responds, kind of laughs it off and says, hey, everybody, they want to give me a makeover, and I've been offered all this money and all these free treatments to do something about my hair. But, I didn't take it because I think my hair is tremendous. Now, Daniels wasn't exactly satisfied with that answer, and she's like, no, if you were offered all this stuff, then why didn't you take it? Like, you should probably, why don't you upgrade that hair, right, and actually do something with it? And she said that he believes that if he cuts his hair or he changes his hair, that he would lose his power and his wealth. So he believes that all the power and wealth that he has accrued throughout his life is because of his hair and how fantastic his hair is. That's insane. Are you serious? It didn't have anything to do with the small $1 million loan that he got from his father or the business that his father built that he inherited, plus the hundreds of millions of dollars that he inherited from his father. Doesn't have anything to do with that. No. He's also discounting his own, what he would say, business acumen, right? If he has any, which I actually don't think that he has. Look, and you can look at through all of his business dealings and all the fact that he had gotten that he had become bankrupt more than 6 times. Discounting all that, right? No, it's not through any of his tremendous, business dealings and everything. No, it's because of his hair. Really? Now Daniels adds, hearing Trump say this, and maybe it was a joke. Let's be fair. This could be a joke, right? Even if it's a joke. Wow. See, here's the thing. Daniels, of course, laughed hysterically at him, as anyone would. And look, maybe if he was joking, that's an excellent joke. And maybe Donald Trump's got a really good sense of humor, and we just didn't know about it. To be absolutely fair. Although, something in me says, wait a minute, maybe he's not joking. And for that, I go to his explanation of low energy, right? So this is what Trump does. He calls people that he doesn't like low energy, right? Low energy Jeb, right? You got low energy. You're not, successful because you just have low energy, right? Well, he actually believes that inside of us, we're born with a certain amount of energy. And if you exercise too much, right, then you drain your battery and you don't get that back. So Donald Trump goes around and doesn't exercise, doesn't do a whole lot other than golf, and, decries everyone else, the people that don't like him, as low energy. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, yeah, I'm actually inclined to believe that this is more true because of what we've seen before. So, I don't know. Is Donald Trump's... Does he actually believe his hair is a source of power? I don't necessarily know for sure, for certain. But do I think that he thinks that way? Absolutely. Okay. Let's go to some serious news now. Let's get the fun out of the way. All right. So right now, there are fears, legitimate fears, of a government shutdown. If the government doesn't pass a spending bill to allocate funding to the government, as of tonight, then the government will shut down and various federal services will no longer be functional. There are a lot of things that will actually no longer be funded and no longer work. So we'll have to close certain things down, public parks and things. Now, it seems like we've been fighting this fight every few months for the last few years. For example, Republicans will hold something hostage, Democrats will either back down, or they'll come to a compromise and kick the can down the road for another couple of months. However, that might not actually happen this time. Democrats, surprisingly enough, and I'm very cynical when it comes to the Democrats, it seems like so far, most of them are actually willing to fight. That is unless you're Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein, I forget which one, actually, that continues to flip on this issue and say, oh, you know what, maybe I won't protect the Dreamers, because that's one of the things this is actually about. Now, let me give you some more details here. The New York Times reports that after the House cleared stopgap spending legislation on Thursday that would keep the government funded through February 16, i.e. kicking the can down the road, Senate Republicans are set to test whether Democrats will make good on their promise to move the government towards a shutdown. Now, Democrats appear intent on securing concessions that would, among other things, protect from deportation young immigrants brought to the country illegally as children. Those are the Dreamers, right? Now, they're also seeking an increase to domestic spending, aid for Puerto Rico, who still, a lot of the islands still does not have power and are still rebuilding their infrastructure. And also they want to bolster the government's response to the opioid epidemic. Yeah, the opioid epidemic that President Trump actually promised that he would do something about and has done dick. In fact, actually, they've done things that are worse. Jeff Sessions, now in charge of the Department of Justice, has actually declared a war on marijuana, a new war on marijuana, which actually could be helped or could help people who are impacted by the opioid epidemic. So that's what we're doing. Wonderful. Now, the things that the Democrats are asking for, they're incredibly popular. Over 70%, in some polls, 80% of the country is in favor of doing something when it comes to the Dreamers, right? Making sure that we have protections for people who were brought here as children illegally, but, you know, have had this special program that was set up by the president, by the last administration, Barack Obama, to be able to allow them to work and go to school and pay taxes and move towards a pathway to citizenship. Most Americans are in favor of that. There's actually a small group of people that are so filled with, I think, in my opinion, hatred, right, and bigotry, that they're like, no, they're those people. Why do we want those people in the country? It's like what Trump said. Why do we want to keep bringing in people from quote unquote shithole countries? Well, that's how they feel. But anyway, like people who are under the DACA program, right? These are people who, again, they live here, they work here, they go to school here, they have, in some cases, have families, and some of them own businesses. They hire people. They don't have criminal records. They consistently checked in with immigration officials to try and stay legal while they're in the DACA program. In many cases, they attempted to attain legal status. There was Jorge Garcia here in Michigan that tried to get legal status. His lawyer botched up the paperwork. And so, oh, look, he was just deported. So, I mean, that's heartbreaking. He's been here for 30 years, did everything that he's supposed to do, no criminal record, nothing. And yet, no, sorry, you're Mexican, gotta send you back to a country that you don't even know. So, what do the Republicans have done? I mean, look, this is a super popular issue, and the Republicans have decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to tie this DACA to funding for the wall and funding for the military. Now, they also put in CHIP reauthorization. You know, CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program. It's actually incredibly popular, very, very helpful when it comes to, I don't know, helping children in poverty. This is something that they could have fixed for months. And the Republicans are like, no, we're going to ignore it. Oh, look, we can use it as a bargaining chip in order to get funding for the wall. Okay, well, let's put it in this so we can fund the government. They could have reauthorized it so many times. They also could have extended DACA protections. But again, they decided to use it as a bargaining chip. And it's disgusting. These are sick people. They want to build a useless wall. Right? This wall that's $18 billion that can get defeated by a fucking ladder or a catapult or a drone or people who fly in and overstay their visas. We have a net zero immigration from Mexico. More immigrants are leaving the United States than are coming in. And those idiots are like, no, let's get a wall. We need a wall. We need a wall. We have to have a wall. We got to protect ourselves from what? From people leaving? Yeah, okay, man. You're going to waste $18 billion in a wall. These are the same people that say, we can't afford Medicare for all. No, we can't afford to make sure that we can, allow people to go to college without amassing hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Can't do that, but we could build a fucking wall. Idiots. Look, Republicans could have taken up all these other issues at any other time, but they decided not to. And it's because they don't care about people. And look, all they care about is getting a political win and just blaming the Democrats. And that's exactly what they're doing. In fact, Donald Trump tweeted out, government funding bill last night in the House of Representatives. Now Democrats are needed if it is to pass the Senate, but they want illegal immigration and weak borders. Shutdown coming. We need more Republican victories in 2018. Well, number one, no, we don't want more illegal immigration. More people are leaving the United States. We don't need a wall. A wall can be easily defeated. It's ridiculous, right? And no, we don't want weak borders. We actually have an incredibly strong border. You know, it's funny how Trump is now against a shutdown. I remember when he said the government could use a good shutdown. Well, what happened? What happened? Now, here comes Mitch McConnell, right? Speaking of Republicans. Now, he's Senate Majority Leader. And basically, he said, oh, I can't believe the Democrats are so fixated on illegal immigration at the expense of everything else. Really? Republicans, again, control Congress. And this is why I keep harping on the point where Republicans, they're in control of the government. They could have authorized a DACA fix, and they could have authorized CHIP funding, right, for children's health insurance. They could have authorized and passed all that stuff with bipartisan support had they put up a clean bill for both of them. Not attaching it to any further spending, not attaching it to putting to a goddamn fucking wall that, again, it's not going to work. They don't do any of that. They're playing games with these people, okay? Look, and the Republicans, they have a strategy, right? But Trump's too dumb to understand the strategy. Yesterday, he tweeted, CHIP should be part of a long-term solution, not a 30-day or short-term extension. I agree with that. But yet, the very thing that the Republicans are doing is putting in a short-term extension in order to get funding for the border wall. Come on. This idiot just showed the Republican strategy for what it is. A way to hold the government hostage in order to get what the hell they want. And then what they want is they want more military funding. They want more money to go to the wall. So get this. This is the new argument, right? Here's Kevin McCarthy. He goes out there and says, if Senate Democrats obstruct this legislation and as a result shut down the government, they have made the decision to cut off pay to our troops and block children's health care funding that they support. No. Democrats didn't make that decision. You guys made that decision because you didn't do this when you had the chance. And by the way, speaking of the military, right? You know how much money we spend in the military already? $611 billion a year. More than the next 8 countries combined. Oh, no, Democrats don't care at all about the military. We don't care about military families. No, Republicans use military members as a fucking prop. Like, every time. What about the veterans? What about the veterans? But when it comes to actually passing legislation that helps the veterans, what do Republicans do? They push against it. What are their main priorities? No, their main priorities are tax cuts for the rich, which they just got. And of course, what they're doing is they're pitting DACA recipients against children and against the military. This is all political grandstanding. It's all political theater, and it's all 100% bullshit. Just pass some clean bills. That's all they need to do. And then they could fund the government. But again, this isn't the problem with the Democrats. This is a problem with the Republicans always playing games with bullshit. The Republicans want to force funding in the wall in order to fund the government, and the shutdown is on them, not anyone else. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So recently, John Kelly might have made the president a little bit angry by suggesting in a recent interview that the president was uninformed on the wall and had evolved his position. Now, according to the New York Times, when Trump heard this, he started out being like, okay, well, did I evolve? Maybe I don't know if I've, you know what? I did evolve. Trump, later on, while at first, after talking to his friends and allies, became convinced that Kelly had undermined him, according to people familiar with the conversations. And by Thursday morning, after digesting accounts of Mr. Kelly's comments on cable news, the president had become furious. Because, of course, the biggest crime in Trump world is to make it seem that other people are in charge or are managing Trump, or that Trump's a child. Now, Trump is a child, and he is being managed by many different people, one of them including John Kelly, who's kind of like the babysitter for this whole thing, right? Now, later on, you could see his frustration in his tweets when he tweeted out, "The wall is a wall. It has never changed or evolved from the first day I conceived of it." That's wrong. Survey says that's a lie. He's evolved actually on plenty of things when it comes to the wall. First off, who's supposed to pay for the wall? Mexico. Mexico was supposed to pay for the wall, but now for some reason that he's willing to shut down the government over funding for the wall. But wait a minute, if Mexico is paying for the wall, then why do you have to get money from the taxpayer? Why do you have to have money for Congress? I guess apparently Mexico's not paying for the wall. Are they? That's an evolution. I know Republicans, they don't believe in evolution, or at least a lot of them don't. So they get, of course, riled up whenever you mention evolution. No, doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Well, Trump's the same way. I guess he does not, again, he does not want anyone to believe that he is not the smartest person in the room, that he's not coming up with every fantastic idea. Okay. Anyway, they continue. Later in the morning, the president spoke to his chief of staff and made his displeasure clear, according to two people familiar with the conversation. So look, this is a situation that actually plays out pretty regularly inside the White House. Trump cannot stand to be managed, as I said before, or even have the appearance. Now, that was the problem with Steve Bannon, right? That was the thing that pissed him off the most about Steve Bannon. No, what are you talking about? Bannon? No, he doesn't control me. No, he's not running things by the White House. He played a very minimal role in my White House. He barely gave any advice, and I didn't even listen to it. No, not at all. So, when a close Trump friend and confidant told Jonathan Swan of Axios yesterday that John Kelly was going into Bannon territory, watch out. You don't want to be in Bannon territory because that, again, that perception could cost you your position, could cost you your job, right? So, and of course, Kelly doesn't want to be seen as a glorified babysitter, even though that's exactly what he's being seen not only as the media by the media as, but from people inside the White House. According to people who have observed him, he often positions himself as a one-man check against dangerous or reckless moves by the commander-in-chief. He says his loyalty is not to the president, but to the Constitution and the country, according to two people with direct knowledge of the remarks. Mr. Kelly, officials say, has made a conscious decision not to focus as much on curbing the president's penchant for tweeting or saying inflammatory things, because you can't stop him from doing that. And to instead pour his efforts into controlling who sees and talks to Mr. Trump and trying to shape his thinking on key issues. So part of that was him getting rid of Omarosa. Omarosa was causing all sorts of problems. In fact, one of the things that she was doing when she was in the White House before John Kelly had arrived is she would get articles about things that people said in media that were negative about Donald Trump. And she would go and she would take these things and she would go and bring them to the president. Be like, oh, dude, hey, look at what Joe Scarborough said about you today. Oh, God damn it. Morning, Joe. I hate those guys. So that's part of what she would do. And, of course, that would rile him up for the entire day. He'd be pissed for hours, and he'd be tweeting ridiculous things. Not that that stopped at all, but nonetheless, he'd be tweeting more ridiculous things. So, of course, when Kelly became chief of staff, he shut that shit down. And eventually, Omarosa did leave the White House after all, because she didn't have any access to the president. Nobody had any access. Not even Steve Bannon had access anymore without going through John Kelly. So that's one of the things that he did. Now, the way that he was able to get so much power and to get the president to do the things that he said, like, again, for example, getting rid of Omarosa, is using his leverage. And let me give you an example of how he used that leverage, or how he even got the leverage in the first place. Early in his tenure, Mr. Kelly frequently threatened to quit as a way of getting people, particularly the president, to follow his orders, according to 4 people close to Mr. Trump. One advisor to the president said it was among the few weapons in Mr. Kelly's arsenal. Another said that he used it less regularly now. Well, now that it's been established, absolutely. So now that they know, like, hey, man, look, I ain't going away. I'm going to get my way, so, or else I'm out of here. And now it just goes unsaid. Okay. Now, that's the reason that Kelly is still there. And among some of the other reasons that Kelly's still there is because he actually is a lot like Trump in some ways. Both Mr. Trump and Mr. Kelly, according to the Times, are used to being in charge. And both are prone to dramatic outbursts of temper, according to interviews with half a dozen White House officials. Kelly has also been known to storm out of meetings or briefings if they take a direction that he doesn't like. He has also repeatedly barked orders at senior advisors who have conversations with Mr. Trump that Mr. Kelly did not authorize. So basically, he's just not taking shit, right? So I think in that way, they're both, I'm going to veer into alt-rightish kind of territory here when it comes to this, but they're both apparently the big alpha males, right? They're the big alpha monkeys that are managing their staff, right? I mean, Trump wants to be the alpha monkey, but he's not exactly good at it because he's a moron. And John Kelly, he is the alpha, right? So, and of course, he's just making sure that Trump doesn't see him that way. Oh, no, Donald, here's your banana, right? He just, I'm not managing you. No, I'm just helping you. Okay. Now, both also have a tendency, and this is similarity still, to say different things to different audiences, as Mr. Kelly is more strident about the need to restrict immigration than some people had realized. So that's something that I guess they have in common, or at least you can see the effect of. Because Donald Trump doesn't care one way or the other. If you think that's something that he actually cares about illegal immigration, he actually cares about, building the wall, no. The reason that he was so stringent on the wall is because it plays really well with his audience. He says, oh, I'm going to build a wall, right? And they cheer and they cheer and they cheer. So he's like, oh, I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to build a wall. But at some points it was a fence. And at this point, he has adopted what was Hillary Clinton's position. We're going to build a fence in some places. I mean, he didn't say fence specifically, but he said, well, we're going to have a see-through wall. Well, what's a see-through wall? It's a fence. They're not making it out of transparent aluminum, okay? It's a fence, which is Hillary Clinton's position. And of course, when you realize that, it's kind of fucking hilarious that he's pushing for this, right? But anyway, now, despite their similarity on immigration, right? And I think it's more of Kelly and Bannon's influence on Trump that led him to that position, right? They have some differences as well, and their difference mainly is style. Now, Mr. Trump favors chaos, and Mr. Kelly believes in strict command and control. And while Mr. Trump believes in his abilities as a salesman, Mr. Kelly is unused to being thrust in front of the national political spotlight. And you could see that when he gave that ridiculous press conference before, where he essentially lied for Trump when it came to the soldiers that died in Africa. Okay. Anyway, so the question is, right? So is this latest blow up Is this going to be the beginning of the end of Kelly? And I give you all that context to think about that, right? I mean, look, after all, one source close to the White House did say how Kelly was, again, venturing into Bannon territory. You don't want to be in Bannon territory. Now, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to end up, right? And I'm not even sure about making a prediction about how this is going to end up. I mean, they are similar in a lot of ways. Kelly is more than happy to lie on his behalf and to try to kiss his ass. So, I don't know. It's interesting. That said, we also thought the same thing about Bannon. That Bannon wasn't going to lose his position in the White House, nor did we ever think that he was going to be thrown under the bus the way that he has. So we'll have to see. But I can say one thing. If Kelly ends up being fired, because I don't think that he'll quit, I think he actually does see this as my patriotic duty to make sure that Trump doesn't blow up the world. Well, then, if he does get fired, then prepare to see the White House slide back into complete and total dysfunction instead of only partial dysfunction. Okay. So, I am going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back. So, stay right here. Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, we've got more stories here, but first, I do want to thank everybody for watching the show. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Those of you on Facebook as well, hello, and thank you for watching. All right, let's move on. We got more stories here, so let's go into how a Fox commentator thinks white supremacists better than illegal immigrants. All right. So, some very fine people, right? Okay. So a conservative commentator recently went on Fox News to actually defend white supremacists and actually go after undocumented immigrants. So this is amazing. Now, this is in response to a segment done by Chris Cuomo on CNN where he said, hey, look, the problem isn't undocumented immigrants coming in. The problem is white supremacy. So here's Mark Stein with the response to that. Let's watch. And this was on Tucker Carlson's show.
What's interesting is that both he and Nancy Pelosi and others on that side of the aisle are getting ever more explicit in their preference for illegal immigrants, so-called, as he would say, over American citizens. He said, Chris Cuomo went on to say that the real problem is white supremacists in America. They're the real monsters, not these nice, hard-working illegal immigrants. And that may be well and true. I mean, for the purposes of argument, let's just say he's right. It's irrelevant. The white supremacists are American citizens. The illegal immigrants are people who shouldn't be here. And the organizing principle of nation states is that they're organized on behalf of their citizens, whether their citizens are cheerleaders or white supremacists or whatever. You're stuck with them. And this preference that Nancy Pelosi and Chris Cuomo and increasing people have for actually importing a class of citizen that they prefer to the ones they're stuck with is actually very revealing.
Oh, yes, it's very revealing. Also saying that I would rather have white supremacists, because they're Americans, over undocumented immigrants. That's also very revealing. So, now I love this assertion, right? You know, these nice, hardworking, illegal immigrants, that may be well and true. And for the purposes of argument, let's say it is true. No, let's not say it is true. It actually is true. Look, immigrants, right? And not just immigrants, but undocumented immigrants actually commit crimes at lower rates than native-born Americans. In comparison, white supremacists and actual native-born Americans actually commit more crimes and actually commit more violence. I mean, look, for example, recently an Anti-Defamation League study, which tracks terrorism from all stripes. This isn't people who are just defending, that are defending Islamic terrorists or anything like that. No, they hate old terrorism and they hate old crime, right? They found in their study that right-wing extremists were responsible for 71% of all extremist-related deaths in the U.S. And of that, 18 of them were committed by white supremacists. White supremacists. That's of the 34 extremist-related murders. But no, tell me how it's undocumented immigrants that are doing all the crime, that are doing all the terrorism, right? No, white supremacists are the ones who killed Heather Heyer back in Charlottesville. They're the ones that did all the violence in Charlottesville. But of course, the president came out and said, well, there were very fine people on both sides. Really? The side with the white supremacists had very, very fine people on that? No, that's bullshit. Again, tell me who the monsters really are. The undocumented immigrants who, look, in the case of DACA, come here when they're children and then go to school and they get jobs and they build a life and they have kids. And they sometimes, like I said, create businesses, create jobs, and pay into the economy, and are living, the American dream, or are trying to live the American dream. Those guys are the monsters. And the people who hate people based on the color of their skin, oh, well, those are the good people, right? Because they're Americans, they were born here. Mark Stein, again, he's like, hey, man, look, I understand your argument, but you know what? Still, you're stuck with him. You're stuck with him. You can't import these other people. Oh, jeez. That's the argument, right? Basically, these people are just lucky enough to be born in America. And so, and since they were lucky enough to be born in America and not brought here as a child or not immigrated here, that they're better, right? They're better than people, than illegal immigrants. And therefore, they're the only ones that actually deserve to be here. No, they're not the problem, right? It's the immigrants. The immigrants are the problem, according to this guy. Look, sadly, I know a lot of people who tend to think that way. And there's a lot of you on YouTube as well, in the comments section. And it's frustrating because, look, there's nothing that I could say that actually gets through the hatred and the bigotry and the fear. And I think that's the main part. And you know what Yoda says, right? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and so on. Well, that's exactly what's going on. These people are so deeply afraid of other people who look different. And so that fear gets turned into hate. And this propaganda helps them, helps turn that fear into hatred. Because you've got all these pundits out there that are saying, no, the reason that your job went away, it's not because corporations want to outsource to pad their bottom line. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with Jorge and Juan coming up and taking your job. Well, you can't actually go and steal a fucking job. No, you can go in, like, you can't take, you can't just literally steal someone's job. It's amazing. But just dealing with the stupid, I mean, it hurts. It hurts. They hate people because they're different, because they come from different places. And this is the tribalism mentality, right? And they're all there to protect their tribes. And the white supremacists, they actually think they're doing a service. They actually think they're doing good because, well, we're protecting our own. We're protecting our tribe. We got to keep the brown people out because they're going to hurt us. They're going to take our jobs. They're going to hurt our, rape our women and take our children. And, they're going to do all these terrible things. And when in reality, no, all they're trying to do is they're trying to make a better life for themselves than the opportunity that they had in their home, what was their home country. They wanted to make America their home country because there's actually opportunity here as opposed to some of the places that they come from. They're not coming here to harm us or destroy our ways of life. That's just not what's going on. But again, these people, they don't understand that, and they don't empathize because on a base level, they don't think these people are human beings. How can you even argue with somebody who lacks that basic understanding and lacks that basic empathy? I don't know. And I've given up trying. I mean, so, look, he said, well, I can't believe Nancy Pelosi would rather have illegal immigrants. And would rather have a preference for illegal immigrants. Well, you know what? Compared to white supremacists, I would rather have 1 million illegal immigrants come here instead of having these white supremacists like Mark Stein. So, yeah, that's my preference. Deal with it. Okay. These are not very fine people. Moving on. So, Republicans have been wanting to kill the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau pretty much since its inception. I mean, they actually hate the idea of government holding companies accountable that actually screw over their customers. The elected officials, they despise it. Like, no, let the free market take care of it. The free market doesn't really do a whole lot because, look, it never takes care of these things. We've never had a situation where an unregulated market didn't turn into a monopoly. I mean, there's the thing, remember the things called company stores? This is when we had no regulations and we had gigantic mega corporations that were basically running their own company stores and things like that, where they would abuse workers. There were no union rights. Look, there's modern day examples. You could go over to Bangladesh. You can see what happens when you don't have regulation, when you don't have consumer protections. Okay, there's people getting ripped off all the time. But see, these Republican politicians, they get paid by these gigantic companies. So they're like, I don't care if they take advantage of you. I'm still getting my paycheck. So when Donald Trump won the election, I was pretty concerned that he would appoint someone to the agency, to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that would end up destroying the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I was right. The acting director is now Mick Mulvaney. Now, Mick Mulvaney hates consumer protection, right? He once called the CFPB, quote, a sick, sad joke. Well, I can think of the joke, right? But it's not actually funny. So when Mulvaney took over, he promised that, no, nothing's going to change. We're going to run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, except that now, instead of protecting consumers, we're actually going to go and we're going to change the mission statement of the CFPB to go and attack burdensome regulations on companies. So they immediately went and changed that so it would be pro-corporations and pro-banks. Now, the newest report here is how he's actually going to do that. So his first act is to defund his own agency. The Hill is reporting that Director Mulvaney has requested $0 from the Federal Reserve to fund bureau operations for 3 months in a letter to Fed Chairwoman Janet Yellen. Now, that's how this works, right? So in order to make sure that it's an independent agency, independent of Congress, they set it up under the Obama administration to get its funding from the Federal Reserve, which is not tied to Congress, which is not tied to the politics, to keep it a neutral agency so that it actually can do its job without political considerations. So, but with Mulvaney now director, he's like, yeah, that's all well and good, but guess what? I don't care about this agency. I'm going to get rid of this agency. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask for no money. $0. Mulvaney said the CFPB expects to spend about $145 million running in the next quarter. He intends to fund it through the Bureau's $177 million emergency reserve account with the Federal Reserve's New York branch. So what does that mean, right? That means he's running the agency to a bare minimum. That means no enforcement, no crackdown on bad actors, no investigations, nothing. So he's like, yeah, we're just going to run it bare bones. We're going to get enough money to keep the lights on and keep people getting paid, but that's it. Don't care. So that's not the worst part of it. Now, since, yes, they're not going to do any investigations, but they're also just going to let the banks do whatever the hell they want. In fact, the first group of banks or financial institutions that they plan on helping is the payday lenders. So on Wednesday, they announced that it would allow companies subject to its new payday lending rules that would have gone into effect in 2019. They would allow these companies to get a delay in complying with its first deadline. And Mulvaney announced on Thursday that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau would also solicit complaints about its practices as he looks to loosen its hold on the financial services industry. So let's just help out the payday loan industry, right? The payday loan industry is incredibly predatory. They trap people, poor people, in cycles of debt with higher and higher interest rates. You're going to help out those guys? Oh, no. See, the rules that we came up with, looks like you don't have to follow those rules anymore. Sorry. Not sorry. We're on your side. Look, that's what they're saying, right? This is saying that the Trump administration, we have shifted our focus from helping consumers from the last administration, which we didn't agree with, and now we're going to go and help the payday lenders. We're going to help the banks. We're going to help the global financial elite. Isn't that what Donald Trump actually ran against in the last election? I thought he made a big deal about going after the global financial elite that screwed over many, many Americans, but it looks like that's not what they're doing. No. They're not protecting consumers. They're protecting the corporations and their interests. If anything, is the sick, sad joke is that Mulvaney is changing the one agency that was specifically created to protect consumers into one that is now specifically there to protect the banks and the powerful. Okay. I think I'm going to take one more quick break here. We'll be back. We got one last story, so stay right here. Round the Nation. Be right back. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. One more story here that I want to get to, and this is, of course, just another effect of neoliberal economics. All right. So, disastrous story. Children in America that are born in America, let me start that again. Children that are born in America are now more likely to die before reaching adulthood than children born in other wealthy countries, according to a new study. Now, this research that was published in the Journal of Health Affairs on a couple of weeks ago shows that the United States lags far behind peer countries on child health outcomes. So, how bad is it? Well, it's pretty bad. Now, the study estimates that since 1961, America's poor performance accounts for more than 600,000 excess child deaths. Deaths that wouldn't have happened if these kids were born into other wealthy countries. But wait a minute here. I thought America was number one. I thought we had an entire political party, that was dedicated to protecting the children, right? Well, it turns out that the policies of that party are the cause of this disparity. Now, let me get to more information here. This is from Ashish Thakkar, the study's lead author. He said that in all the wealthy democratic countries that we studied, children are dying less often than they were 50 years ago. But we found that children are dying more often in the United States than any other similar country. And if that's not disastrous enough, it also coincides with data from another study that shows that overall life expectancy in America has declined for the past 2 years. So we're dying sooner, and more children are dying before reaching adulthood. So people who are already adults are dying sooner, and then less children are making it to adulthood. That's disastrous. Now, between 2001 and 2010, for example, researchers found that the risk of death in the United States was 76% higher for infants than in peer countries. Now, look, you could blame that on, like a lot of people would want to blame the they'll want to blame Trump, right? And they'll want to blame the Republicans specifically. Actually, this goes back between the Bush years and some of the Obama years. So it's not just Republican administrations, it's also Democratic administrations, because we have not had a focus on things like universal health care. We have not had a focus on making sure that we stop childhood poverty. In fact, neoliberal pro-conservative economics, combined with trickle-down and things like that, that's been preventing us from actually solving these problems. Now, if you're somebody who is pro-life, you should be absolutely outraged by this, right? I mean, again, if you want to protect children, you want to make sure children survive into adulthood, and you call yourself pro-life, you're like, I want to protect the kids, I want to protect the babies, right? Well, 76% of children are likely to die before getting into adulthood than in other countries. This isn't America. This isn't some third world shithole, as President Trump would call it, right? No, this is America, where we're supposed to look after the kids, where we're supposed to be the best country at everything, but it's obvious we're not. So why aren't pro-life people out there demanding, more anti-poverty programs and things like that, Medicare for all, universal health care, things like that? Well, they're not. Now, I said to other countries, right? So let's look at some of the other countries and show and do a comparison of where we stand. The No Health Affairs study compared the United States to 19 other wealthy democratic countries, including Canada, Australia, France, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Now, it found that all 20 countries have seen declines in childhood deaths since the 1960s. That's a good trend. At the same time, it shows the United States is actually ranking worse in childhood deaths since the 1960s. Now, I alluded to the reason before. Now, look, we know the reason, but I'm going to guess that people who are, right-wing pro-life, they're going to find another reason, right? Abortion. No, it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with about abortion. It actually has to do with everything that happens after they're born. This is a result of our healthcare system. In fact, the author of the study, Thakrar, argues that this is most likely has to do with America's fragmented healthcare system. He says, mothers who are qualifying for Medicaid for the first time because their mothers might be seeing doctors for the first time. They might not have a family physician or a clear support system. You know what to fix that? Medicare for all. Hey, pro-lifers, you want to save the children? Hop on board, man. I want to save the children. I want to save the children who are already born. We can do that. Medicare for all. Let's push Medicare for all together. Let's all get together. Now, there's more than just healthcare that's a factor, of course. Thakrar also points to the rise in childhood poverty in the 1980s that coincided with the United States falling behind its peer countries on health outcomes. So the great Reagan deregulation, the great Reagan conservatism push, right, in the 1980s, that's when we started falling off the board. That's also when corporations started to get even more wealthy, more money went into our politics, and less people started having good outcomes. Poverty became even worse. All had to do with, of course, Ronald Reagan, right? And the rise of right-wing conservatism, as we see now. Okay, look, if you're pro-life, well, let's get together and let's help increase programs and that alleviate poverty, right? I have a feeling that they're not interested in doing that, right? They're not interested. The only thing they're interested in is preventing abortion. Well, there's something we can do on that too. How about we make sure that there are programs out there for families that are in poverty? So, to help them take care of their kids so they're less likely to abort. So, look, doing these programs would actually help twofold, right? You would prevent abortions based on monetary concerns, and you would help children that are already poor to not die from being poor. And not only are small children dying from lack of health care, but teenagers are also dying at a higher rate too. But like the other reasons, this is also completely preventable. In fact, children between ages of 15 and 19, according to the study, are now 82 times more likely to die from gun homicide in the United States than in peer countries. So that's 82 more times. 82. And you want to talk about a disaster, right? That is both shocking and not surprising at the same time. Look, in America, we have more guns than people, right? Children can get a hold of those guns very, very easily. Look at a lot of the school shootings that are happening. Take your pick of mass shootings. There are plenty to choose from. Now in America, it's pretty normal for groups of 4 or 5 people to get randomly gunned down at any time. The only time that it makes news all day now is when over 50 people get gunned down in one setting. That's something we can actually do something about. That is another cause of why people are not living, why children are being killed. Children are dying and teenagers are dying, and while we're not living as long as other countries. Other countries have stronger gun control measures, and they have far, far less mass shootings, and they have far, far less homicides. So, look, if you're interested in doing something about it, then maybe you should help us get some common sense gun control passed. No, I don't mean taking away all your guns. I mean actually doing something that will help prevent guns from falling into the hands of people that shouldn't have them, or into the hands of the children who don't know what they're getting into. We're more likely to see a toddler shoot somebody or shoot themselves in America now. That's insane. That's insane. Look, I'm trying to appeal to you guys here. But again, I don't think that I'm being very successful. Pro-lifers, you guys are very, very conservative. And if anything, a lot of conservatives have shown that they don't care about children after they're born, especially if they end up becoming a drain on the system. And I've seen this argument over and over again. Why should I end up paying for other people's kids? Well, maybe it's because you made abortion not an option, or you're trying to make abortion not an option. Well, then I guess those people shouldn't have had sex. That's not a solution. There are no solutions on that side. And besides, look, if you don't want people to have sex, then we've got a solution for that as well. Comprehensive sex education and access to contraceptions has been shown to reduce accidental teen pregnancies. Teens are actually having less sex than they had before. And, of course, you'll probably want to blame that on smartphones. But you know what? Maybe that's a good part of smartphones, that they're not tempted to have as much sex. But no, look, I'm not going to see people who are receptive to that message. And look, if you are, that's wonderful. Then work with us, right? But all too often what I see in response to this is, look, we don't want your socialized medicine. We don't want your gun control. That's un-American. You communist. No. And the horrible thing is that while they're making these arguments, all of these things, plus opioid addiction, for example, is killing them. And look, maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe I'm doing way, way too much generalizing. If so, prove me wrong. Work with us and actually get these policies through and actually help. Because this study, nobody wants to live in a country where your children are 70% more likely to die before reaching adulthood than any other country. And we're supposed to be the best. We're supposed to be the wealthiest. We're supposed to be the most developed and the most advanced country on earth. Well, you know what? We sure as hell are not acting like it. Okay. That's it, guys. That's all I have. All right. So before I go, no show on Monday, right? So I will not be here on Monday. I have things that I have to do. So we will be back on Tuesday. So everybody, make sure to have a good weekend, a safe weekend, and always and all that. And as always, love you guys. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this channel. You can also like us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/TYTNation. Follow me on Twitter @TYTNation or my personal account @JeffsPolitics. And if you want to help the show continue, you can always go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TYTNation. I also want to thank some people for some super chats. Traversable, thank you so much. And Kieran, thank you as well for donating to the show through the super chat. You two are awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. So, all right. All that. Okay. Love you guys. We'll see you after the weekend. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. You have a great weekend.